Welcome to Learning Through Technology, a K-12 EdTech podcast brought to you by STS Education. We strive to be the bridge that connects communities of educators so that they can fulfill the promise of learning through technology. Join us every other week as we connect with education leaders who share their deep experience with the education and technology topics you are grappling with in your own schools and districts. Each interview is designed to bring you tangible ideas you can start using tomorrow. I'm Alex Inman, the founder of Educational Collaborators.
And I'm Bob Cerruti, founder of the EduTech Group. Welcome to the show.
Bob, I was talking with one of the STS sales reps who was working with the school down in San Diego area, Escondido School District. Their middle school, she helped them set up their entire esports program, right? Furniture, the equipment, the program, the curriculum, and coaching, mentoring. The kids got started. They did their first middle school esports competition, and it was phenomenal. The energy, the kids were just brimming with excitement. Local TV news came. They ran the story on the news. It was a ton of fun. And I'm excited that we're going to have Kyle Berger, who is one of the early pioneers in esports, on our show today.
Well, I guess I just have 4 words for you. Learning Through Technology podcast jerseys. I think that's 5 words. I'm doing math like Alex. I just want jerseys, man. I just want jerseys. Yes, totally said that. No, it's 5. So
I don't know if you've gotten one, but I got an esports jersey from STS Education.
I'm talking podcast swag here.
Podcast swag jerseys.
When we get to talk to people like Kyle about esports, I get excited because I'm a gamer and I have been for many decades, I'm afraid to say.
Yeah, let's see what Kyle has to say. Let's get into this. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the show. We've got an exciting episode today. So today we have Kyle Berger, who is the Chief Technology Officer of Grapevine Colleyville ISD in North Texas. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Kyle, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Awesome. Well, as mentioned, my name is Kyle Berger. I'm the Chief Technology Officer in Grapevine Colleyville ISD, located in North Texas. Texas is a big place, so if you've ever been to Dallas-Fort Worth or landed at the Dallas-Fort Worth DFW airport, that is smack in the middle of my school district here. So for me, I have been a Chief Technology Officer in education for 24 years now. I'm spread across the North Texas area. Been in about 8 years of those here in Grapevine Colleyville ISD. For me, it was a passion to come to education. I started out in the corporate world and really had that calling and draw to come into the education segment for technology. And one of the big things for me of why is the core for me is really how I can change and help change and transform education, ultimately to bridge what I see the gap between the way our kids live and the way they learn. And my feeling and philosophy is if I can do and accomplish that, I can help prepare our kids for the future. And as we all know, is a future of unknown jobs, solving unknown problems. And that's the excitement of what I do every day, is to be able to do that and help our children hopefully better everything for all of us.
So, Kyle, you and I actually have something in common in that we started in a corporate world in IT perhaps, and then moved into education. I'd like to know, how did that happen for you? What leads you to ending up in education? The corporate world is not exactly the path people dream of when they go to college. I'm going to leave all the money and glory for education. So how did you get here?
Absolutely. Out of college, going into the corporate world, for me, a lot of factors kind of collided at once. It was kind of when the .com industry and everything was going belly up at that time, and really looking to education. Honestly, probably like a lot of folks out there, they do not think of education or K-12 in regards to technology. And my dad was a CTO for a business corporate world, and my mom was a school secretary. And so, growing up, I spent a lot of time in the schools helping mom over the summertime, cleaning out lockers, all those non-fun things that they get the staff kids to do to help out. And so when that was happening and the transition was happening in the corporate world, I looked upon education just to see kind of what was there. And after having talks and seeing that it really is a different way, it might not be as financially fulfilling, but there's a different type of fulfillment you get with working in education and seeing the impact you do every day in the classroom. As for those young kids, as young as 5 up to 18, and also for what our staff that are ranging in age, the impact I can do for them. So it was calling that I didn't realize was there, and that became a natural fit for me.
So we can't let it go too far without our guests understanding that you are a humble man who decided to get into education. But man, have you had a career like one of the top 100 influencers by EdTech Magazine, a National EdTech Leadership winner. And I think I just saw yesterday or the day before that EdTech Digest named you Trendsetter of the Year, that's freaking awesome.
Yeah, a little bit of pressure.
So that's got to be pressure, right? Like you're the Trendsetter of the Year. Kyle, what trends are you setting?
Yeah, exactly. That's the pressure, right? Now I got to be like, what am I doing here? I have been honored throughout the years, but it's always a testament, I think, as all of y'all know in this industry, not one person can do this alone. I've been surrounded by great people and great communities that have allowed me to push innovation and try to affect change in education. One of the things that I was really humbled by earlier in this year was being invited to the White House and being part of discussions at a national level about cybersecurity for K-12. And that was an eye-opening experience for me as well. So as far as trends and what we're setting, gosh, I don't know. I think it's just the continuation of changing education and what we're trying to do. That could be the way that we are strongly partnering with companies to integrate our students in real world items, from how we're working to attempt to work our kids into automation programming of robots that we actually use to clean our floors in our schools, and working to integrate our kids into potential opportunities to work on autonomous lawnmowers and programming that as well to get their expertise and interest in that. And a trend that I somewhat got known for was something we started 6 years ago, was around the esports integration into education overall. And I think what happens and what's hard for me winning such awards as trendsetter, I don't even realize I'm setting the trend. I'm just kind of running that path and hoping people will follow with me. So that's why I kind of have trouble sometimes saying, okay, which one was it? What are we doing?
I don't think I know anyone who's a trendsetter who actually went out to set a trend. They just followed a passion. And you've had some great success in your career. Let's say one of the reasons why we specifically wanted to invite you to the show is to talk a little bit about esports. So tell us a little bit about that. I've had a chance to kind of read some other articles and interviews from you, but tell us a little bit about how did that kind of come to be at Grapevine Colleyville, and where has it grown?
Absolutely. So, I'm always out there looking to see what is happening in the industry overall, not in K-12, but what is the real world? What is happening? Because ultimately that is what I'm trying to grow our students into. And if I can identify growing trends and things that are happening and then starting to happen at the collegiate level, how am I building a pathway for kids to be able to get to that? And esports was one of those 6 to 7 years ago. It was, at a professional area was growing, viewership and all that. Colleges were really starting to develop teams. And when I reached out and started talking to colleges, like, well, how do students get to you in this area? It was really like, well, they end up applying to school here and we have a team and they try out or we know about them. There really was no path like traditional sports. So I was like, okay, we need to look at how we can address this, because it's a growing industry. And I guarantee you, I have a lot of kids that would be interested in doing this. How can we, again, bridge this gap that's obviously out there? So I went down that route, and with some of our partners, I reached out and said, hey, what's happening in K-12 with this? And a lot of folks at that time, it seems odd to say now, at that time, were scratching their heads like, I don't know, we're not really doing anything with this yet. And I said, well, we're going to try. But if we try, we're going to do it a little bit different, because I need it to be holistic in a sense of how can we create curriculum? How can we truly incorporate it? How can we go beyond just playing a game? Because the first thing I need to do is get over the misnomer of gaming, and especially around kids and gaming. And I can't start a program like this without setting the foundation correctly. And for me, that started with getting out in my community and talking with my parents about what is it you're trying to do and why is gaming so important? Because we're telling our kids to get off the Xbox or the PlayStation, stop doing these things. So that's kind of how it started in the evolution of it. Our first year out, it was probably the biggest thing I underestimated in my career. When we sent out interest forms to our kids, we were flooded with kids wanting to just be a part of what this is. And we had about 75 kids that first year. At the end of that first year, a lot of realization settled in for me. And one of them was when we started looking at the data points that up to 75 to 80% of those kids were not involved in any other activity at all at school. And I think we all know as educators, if a student is engaged or connected in some form or fashion, that's going to greatly impact them, not only in the classroom, but as a person. So for me, it was like we found a gap that was being missed for our kiddos.
K-12 cyber threats are on the rise, and we want to help. Elevate your school's safety with our free cybersecurity checklist. It's your first line of defense, and we're arming you with the top 10 measures to consider when protecting your faculty, staff, and students. Check the show notes for the link to download. So, Kyle, we've had other guests who've talked about esports in the launching of their programs, and everybody who's been successful talks about what they've done to get into their community because, like you said, one of the big banes of our existence is how much screen time our children have. I have a 16-year-old daughter who fortunately is not on as much as many, but still it's a dominating feature of their life. What did you do specifically with your community to put them at ease or to get their backing to take on such an initiative?
Absolutely, because that was one of the big challenges up front. The very first thing we came out, and I came out saying with developing of this program, is we will not be doing any first-person shooting games. I want to get that out of the way. We're not going to be playing shooting games, violent games of that nature. So let's just remove that from the equation because I think a lot of folks, they think of kids in video games are playing some games that might have some sort of violence or those kind of acts to it. And we're not going to do that. And then I frame it in, let's take a look holistically at this industry and start showing the numbers of, the billions of dollars that are funneling through esports. And then we're in Texas, so I had to break it down to football talk, to be honest. And I said, so let's look at Friday night's football here in Texas. What all happens and what all does it take to come to that Friday night? Okay, it takes the player, it takes the coach, it takes that student that's running the video film, it takes an athletic trainer or a kid that's doing that, it takes a student that's running the production, that's putting the things on the scoreboard. There's another student that's streaming it out for the world to watch. There's a kid taking stats. I said, look at all these positions and things that students are involved with. Now, that's the same in esports. It's beyond just the student that's playing the game. There's so many other elements. So when we're doing this, we're not just focusing on building a player. There's a whole ecosystem of jobs and things that we're going to help develop kids with. And really, esports is that connector because it's that interest that drives those kids to it that we're going to be able to branch them out to. So really having that discussion and showing the impact of this community or the industry altogether really helped set that story. And along the way, I brought the parents with us. Parent voice and student voice was huge through this whole process. So as we developed and kept going, our parent involvement and talking with our kids to make sure we're going down the right path was very big.
How did you do that, Kyle? How did you capture and share that parent voice and student voice?
So for me, holistically, student voice is very important. So I have student advisory councils for technology that I go to quarterly throughout my district, and they're as young as second graders. So I have meetings with groups of second grader all the way up to seniors. And another thing that we do that's a little different, I have student tech advisory that's actually kids that have left us. One thing we miss in education is the realization, this might be the corporate aspect of it, is the student being our customer. And when that customer walks across that stage and leaves us, we never go back and really ask, did we do a good job? Did we really prepare you for what you just experienced? We do that while they're here, but they sometimes don't fully tell us honestly. After they leave and they're free, they'll be pretty blunt with you. So collection of student voice for us is something we do in all areas of technology in our district. For parents, I conduct a monthly Parent Technology Academy meeting to where I'm out in the community talking about all sorts of technology we can have a meeting talking about screen time. This month, our meeting is on, I don't know if y'all heard of this thing called AI, but this month our meeting is on AI for parents to help them try to understand it. We talk about apps on the kids' phones and all that. So for me, and the thing I share with my peers across the industry, if you're not out talking with your parents and forming that connection, you need to do that because they're partners in this. And that's the key element altogether.
That's awesome. Well, first off, kudos because you're in Texas, right? So if you compare anything to football, it's basically guaranteed to be accepted. you know? So wise choice of analogy there. But you guys are a good sized district. And so where did you start? How did you expand? Has it expanded? I can't imagine that it's just one club that you have for esports. So how did you start and grow this?
Absolutely. So for us, and when I talk to folks about esports in general, in my mind, there's two models. You have a club model or what I consider a varsity model. And we run a varsity model, which is similar to all of our other sports. So we have a freshman, sophomore JV team and a varsity team. And it's structured with after school practice and all those aspects of a traditional sport. So for us, when we started out, we started our two traditional high schools, and I had a lab that was somewhat dedicated to it. We all have labs within our buildings that we're probably running high things on, AutoCAD or all these high performance machines already. But after school, they sat empty. After school, my internet bandwidth kind of sat empty. So how can I leverage these resources that we already have to really start doing additional things with our kids? So we started out at that size with two team setups at both of our high schools. And we started out focusing just on two game titles. League of Legends and Rocket League were going to be where we focused in on. Of course, the kids wanted to go all over the place, but as we know with technology or any project like this, we need to start small to really understand what we're doing, and then we can look at growing it. So that first year we did that, and then it's grown to every middle school in our district has a program, and our elementary schools actually have a program. But it evolved further to now we actually have esports classes that are curriculum based. It's not about the gaming and being on the team, but it's about the industry holistically. And there's a lot of great educational resources and curriculum now that's out there to help you with that. In middle school, kids can take an esports course. They can take that in high school as well. So at this point, we have every one of our schools. We have a collegiate high school. We run a very large virtual school here. We have a virtual school team as well. So every aspect of it is now ingrained into our district. And what's exciting is that growth that happened at middle school and elementary was driven by my parents. The kids wanted it, but the parents are reaching out saying, we know and see, we want our kids in that now because we see the benefits.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of the things that we've done at our sponsor company, STS Education, they have like an esports trailer. And so it's a mobile esports stadium. And so that way they can take the kids from one school, drive them over to another school in the district, and sometimes even different districts. Or if there's a new district that's interested in it and they want to kind of play, we'll actually host a tournament at their site. And then the championships gets played in the trailer. And it's got the lights and the sound and the big speaker on the outside and the huge like awning over it. It's crazy cool. And I think that there's something to that cool factor. And I'll even bring that back to football. Like the cool kids are those athletes. And esports is an opportunity for those kids. I think, as you mentioned earlier, like you said, 80-90% of the kids that were doing esports weren't in any other activity. Like this is a chance for those kids to be the cool kids. And I think it's an exciting thing for a lot of kids.
Absolutely. You're spot on. I mean, there's jerseys, there's uniforms, physical activities worked into our program with our kids, trainings, all sorts of things to make it a more holistic athlete that's involved with it. And we have to think not only beyond the game, but beyond the screen, as you mentioned, which is wonderful with that trailer, because a lot of times we want to bring the kids out from just sitting behind a computer screen, playing remotely against somebody across the country, possibly, to events to bring them in person. Every year we host a tournament here and we bring in 350 kids from around the area, and we transform what is a traditional auditorium into an esports arena. And just like you mentioned, it's the lights, it's just the atmosphere and all those kind of things to let the kids play on a big stage, stream this thing out and do that excitement. And that's something that's been really big for our kids. And it also helps the program grow for other districts because the parents are coming to watch. Now we have in-person spectators that are sitting there feeling it in person, which makes it different. So having that trailer opportunity is wonderful. And it really helps open up people's mindset that it's just not some kids in a computer lab somewhere, because let's face it, the misnomer of gaming is it's some guy sitting in a basement drinking Mountain Dew all day and eating pizza in the dark that's doing this stuff. And that's not the reality.
That's right.
I was wondering if Kyle had a camera in my basement. It's not me. Diet Coke while I'm gaming.
Okay, that's better. That's a little better.
What do you mean Diet Mountain Dew? That's not me at all. I drink Diet Coke.
Uh,
My gaming computer is in the basement. It's a true story.
well, there's not a problem with that. I'm not trying to say there's an issue there.
So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I think that there's some concern, like along with that. So maybe they're not in the basement eating pizza and Mountain Dew, but they're still sitting in chairs, even if it's in a stadium. And so it's not the same kind of physical activity that you would get from sport. Is there any way that we sort of address that piece of the concern?
Absolutely. And I'll be honest, that's one of the big things. We have kids sign up for the program that we talk about up front, that you're not just going to be sitting down playing a game all day. That's not what this is about. And even if you talk to the professionals that are out there, it's actually counterproductive to sit there and play the game 8-10 hours a day. You're actually going to hurt your performance ability. So we have a lot of things worked into it that is physical activity. Now, they're not out there running laps and doing crazy stuff like that, but it can be as simple as we review the game film from what we just did. Now let's go walk the halls and talk. Let's walk around and talk about what did we see? What did we experience in that? What do we need to do better? And it might seem crazy, but there's special design types of stretches for your hands and, your neck and all those kind of things to make sure your posture is correct. And you're right too. It's not just your normal little computer chair that you might see. That's the best for this. So making sure we have the proper equipment for our students with that. So overall, there's so many aspects of it. The nutritional aspect of it. We joked about Mountain Dew and pizza or Diet Coke. What you eat does impact that for your body, because some of these games, the intensity can go further on with this stuff. So there's a lot of training and things that we've learned from professionals out there asking, how do we make sure that we're building a good athlete here holistically? What's going to make that longevity happen inside of this program? So that's a huge factor that everybody needs to consider.
So Kyle, I could talk about esports for a great deal of time, especially given enough pizza and Diet Coke. But something you said earlier in this, and you'll have to try to stick with me. This is going to be an Alex length monologue here as I bring it together, hopefully.
Oh, no.
If I don't, we'll just have somebody jump in and say, we'll take it from here. So Kyle, your start in education and technology is a little before mine, and you referenced the .com era, which I typically think of as like late 90s to like 2000 when it kind of burst. Then that led to the explosion of the internet. So after you had the .com, you had a burst, but then you had an explosion of the internet, which then led to one-to-one. We have to leverage this for our students. And that was the next big thing. We spent all this time on the internet. How do we get bandwidth right for schools? How do we find the resources for students? We delivered them through a big screen at the front of the classroom, and then we moved on to one-to-one and a little screen on every desk. And now it feels like the same thing you talked about is something we've spent a great deal of time in our company. So for the last 10 years when I've worked, it's been getting internet and bandwidth to students, and then one-to-one for students. And that's been this great goal, and a kind of, there's pictures to be taken. The newspaper shows up when every kid in the high school gets a new device. In the 2010, 2012, we had that. But now it seems like everything we talk about is cybersecurity. So our company has, in the last year, started this initiative. We never wanted to be a cybersecurity company. We just wanted to make things work for kids and staff. And now we're a cybersecurity company because it's all we talk about now, at least behind the doors that you and I and Alex are behind. And you were just recently at the White House for that conversation, which I could spend hours talking about what they think about what we think, because it's not the same, right? That's the whole thing about schools. It's not the same. It's not the same to run a network in a school as it is in a real estate office. It's not the same to deploy devices to students as it is at a car dealership. It is not at all the same. So I guess I want to know what you think about cybersecurity. And are we going to spend a time retrenched in like we're going to build walls instead of opening doors for students? What do you think? And do we have to?
Absolutely. I mean, you're right on with so much of that. And when we hit the pandemic, for example, and we made this shift to everybody virtual, a lot of businesses are like, we have work from home. We've been working from home for a while. What's the big deal? I said, well, you know what? I did work to home with people as young as 5 up to probably 85. And I did that in less than a week. So I don't know if you've done that as your business, but that's not easy.
That is a flex.
And another thing for you corporate folks out there, as well, does your industry in a sense close, air quotes, for 2 months and send all of your users home and then come back? And you've ever experienced I forgot everything from my password to all those kind of things and keep going? So it's a different world for us in education compared to the corporate world, but in a sense, it's the same. So I have over 13,000 kiddos here and 2,000 employees. But when I talk to folks, it's about 15,000 plus end users. It feels like 50,000, 15,000 plus end users. That's a big corporation that I'm taking care of. And not to mention the data that I have to use on those and those prior to us as well. I think we all know on this that education is one of the top industries targeted by cyber attacks. And it's because that data and because we are having to be so nimble in cost. So when we talk about that, and we have to balance the building the walls, like you said, to also being able to teach our kids how to navigate this world that they're going into, and also be able to give them access to new things that are out there in this world. And it is a balance. And so we've done a few different things on that because it is a constant focus around the world, and for us in education, cybersecurity. We have a lot of great tools in place to prevent that, but the big thing is education. I think we all know we can put the fanciest firewalls, the fanciest everything, but it still can come down to somebody clicking a link in an email that brings us to our knees. So that education piece is important. And one thing we're doing around that is it could be as basic as the internet blocking. Okay. So many companies or things you have out there that block the internet, a student will just get a straight block. I don't know about y'all with kids. When you tell your child no, what do they usually say? I don't know what do they say to y'all? Did mine always go, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Right.
You know? So
Yeah.
we have to change our mindset. It's not just about blocking or stopping. We have to tell the story. So why is this blocked? Well, the site has malicious things. It could do this. It could do that. Turn it into educational opportunities with our kids. But then also, we know of those 13 plus thousand kiddos I have here, that's probably a lot of my folks that are trying to get into my network, so to say, because my threats do increase when all my users come back every day. So taking those moments, historically, we used to go to the front office with those kids that have ventured a little too far technically and been like, hey, you shouldn't have done that. Now go to the alternative school. Now it's a different conversation. Now the conversation is more about, okay, how did you do that? And how about working with us a little bit, and let's see how we can hone those great skills and interests you have into something more. So I have students that are part of my cyber team, and they're out there trying to find things. And as they find stuff, they know if they get to a certain point, pause, and then come over to our office and we'll watch and let's see how far you can go.
Your own student white hats.
Yeah. We have a rubric we score them on and kind of grow with that. And this summer, we'll have our summer camp, which is pretty much beat the network, beat the filter. I'll invite the kids in and say, go after it. See what you can do, because you're going to help educate us as well. So it's important to find that balance in there, but mainly it's around the education aspect of it, because every day we can buy and put thousands of software packages on here and still have vulnerabilities. So it's how we can focus on education. And two, you're right. When I was at the event at the White House, this is a lot bigger problem than a lot of people want to admit. And we can get on our soapbox and that bigger problem of the funding aspect of what we need to have to be able to close this gap in there. But at least the conversations are starting.
And not just the students and staff that we have to educate, right?
Absolutely.
It's those legislatures and the leaders of our government that need to know these are the risks that we see and why our data is the most valuable and why we can't just raise our prices. Private industry is like, well, it's built into the cost of goods, so we just charge more. We can't just do that.
Yeah, maybe I should have a processing fee for every assignment that's turned in or something. I don't know.
That's how we'll charge the government.
Yeah.
Instead of average daily attendance, it's data, and then you get charged for that. So
Yeah.
that's the new funding model. I think I may have shared on this podcast before that one of the first kid, this is one of my earliest technology jobs, and one of the kids who had some modest success in trying to attack our network, we pulled him in, and his choice was kind of like you said, either to go away or to become part of our team. And he chose to become part of our team, and he eventually became a school technology director, which is pretty exciting to see.
Yeah, I will not admit to any of that activity as a young child, but that might have been similar for me out there. When we were back in school, we talked about the evolution of all these things. The big threat was that calculator that walked into the classroom to education that we survived. But heck, all of us at that time were trying to survive diphtheria, right, on the Oregon Trail to not succumb to the dangers
Right.
of that.
You have died of dysentery.
I mean, and two, you got to think about it. From when we were growing up, what were we told? We were told, don't talk to strangers, don't get in cars with strangers. Everybody listening to this has an app on your phone where you're calling a stranger to go get a ride. Okay? It's a different world we're in now. All right?
It's still preferable to driving with Alex. I'm just saying. Uber is better. If you've driven with Alex, you'd rather be in a ride with a stranger. So, Kyle, one last thing I want to talk about cyber that you said that caught my attention, because you and I met only today, but we have a lot in common in that you said when you go to a company that offers cybersecurity services, say you're looking for some services, SOC as a service to monitor your network and servers or your users or EDR or whatever. As a tech director for a school, I did that. And what I found is when they looked at the smallest school, like the smallest school district we work with has 700 students. It has about 75 employees. And when a company looks at that and they go, okay, you have 800 users, that's a good sized manufacturing company to them. That's a company that can afford $1 million a year for cybersecurity. Well, I got news for you. That's like 15% of their operating budget is $1 million. So it's one of the things we've done is to build a solution that's tailored for schools because they just can't afford that. And there are certain things we can do that gets us 80 or 90% of the way for 10 or 20% of the money. But I wanted to ask you, because while our company covers, I think, maybe 25 or 30,000 students, they're in different districts or private schools, but you have 13 or 14,000 in your school. So how do you look at it? Are you looking at cybersecurity and services differently than I am? What does it look like for you?
Absolutely. We do have to look at it a little bit different. And one of the extended challenges of what we have here is our virtual school. We've had a virtual school here for 12 years, and that's 1,200 kiddos that really are spread globally. Majority are in Texas, but they have the ability to be globally. And I have teaching staff with that are spread throughout. So it gives us a unique challenge in that aspect of it. And we have to look at things so differently because of that funding aspect of it. There are things I want to do, but at the end of the day, and what I tell my team is I want to do what we can so that I feel comfortable if something does happen, unfortunately, or when, that I can say to my community and to everybody that we did the best we can with the tools we could get to protect the data that we have. And we are continuing to educate and educate and educate. And really, when you break it personal to folks, usually when I talk to the kids in my groups I was talking about earlier, when I introduce myself for the first time, I usually have to say, hey, I'm the guy that blocks the internet. Let's get it out of the way. I'm the guy you hate, and let's carry the conversation. But a lot of times those kids that are causing problems, so to say, they're bored. They're not engaged in something, or we're blocking them from getting to something that they really need to for a research or a project. So they're going to find a way to get to it. So we have to engage in that conversation. Funding and how we have to address it here with our district is we look a lot and lean a lot on our peers around us. The things we have to realize in education, folks, is that we're in this together. Don't reinvent the wheel. The district next to you, the district across the country, or somebody, they're fighting the same battle. Pick up the phone, get on a WebEx, get on something, and find out how are you doing this and how can we leverage each other to protect our systems. And I think that's a big thing for us because that type of partnership and collaboration goes a long way. Because as you mentioned, corporations come in and look at us. They'll give me $1 million price tags for these kind of things. And it's like, yeah, that's not real. I can't do that. How can we step into this in a more efficient manner? And we have a lot of corporate things here that y'all have and a lot of districts have now, 2-factor authentication on everything. The kids rotating their passwords, all sorts of things that are scanning attachments and that kind of stuff that are in place. But I'll be honest, it is hard to sustain due to financials and what we're experiencing financially overall.
At Lenovo, we know that engaging with our students can be challenging, but esports is a clear path to making that connection. Building an esports program helps tap into student interests and inspires them to dream big in science and technology. Lenovo powers your esports program with our Legion brand of high-end gaming machines, coupled with the best support on the market. Whether you are starting from the ground up or looking to grow your program, we're here to help every step of the way. STS loves recommending Lenovo Legion's capable gaming rigs for esports labs. Reach out to your rep today to talk through your ideas or visit lenovo.com/esports.
It is a huge challenge. I'm going to change our direction just a little bit and kind of tie into the don't reinvent the wheel. And I want to bring it back to esports just as we're kind of getting close to the end of our episode here. I was a very, very early adopter, one of the first 10, 12 one-to-one programs in the country. And when we started one-to-one, there were these pioneers who loved the fact that we had no idea what we were doing and trying to carve new ground and get there. And we were comfortable with all the challenges and changes associated with that. And then it became sort of mainstream. And that transition from pioneer to mainstream was certainly an interesting one to observe and watch because you're really meeting people at different spots. I feel like we're at that point with esports right now, where the pioneers have carved the path, they've created the path, but now we're starting to move into mainstream. How are you seeing schools now start to get into esports? And what resources exist for them to kind of adopt this now that the trail has been blazed by folks like you?
Absolutely. It's exciting. I still scratch my head sometimes because I get lots of calls from folks figuring out, how do we start a program? And I'm just like, oh my gosh, we've been doing this for 7 years. Well, I'm glad you're here.
Right. Welcome to the party.
Yeah, I can tell you how we started, but it's different how to start it nowadays because when we started, there were not resources out there. We were just fumbling around trying to figure out what to do. There was no curriculum. There wasn't companies that had solution packages as far as hardware and all these kind of things. So now the collaboration aspect is huge. So you're wanting to start, find out what people around you are doing, find out what that community is. Because when we started, I didn't have schools around me here playing. I had to go to a national level. And then also you have partners already in your district that you're doing business with that have resources for these kind of things. There's some wonderful case studies and stuff out there. You mentioned our great partners that are working with us here on this podcast, STS, and what they can provide. There's tools and people that have been down this road that can help you shape this. And you know what? Don't be scared. A lot of people are scared that this is going to cost a fortune. I can't do this. There is a pathway into esports for every budget in every school. And that's what's great about it. And esports not only eliminates barriers for all kids, it really eliminates barriers for all schools. You can be a part of this no matter what, and we can get you there. And so that's what's exciting. But find out what your community wants. Ask the kiddos. When I started this, I was not a big gamer, to be honest. I played games growing up, but it was different for me. I was still having to blow in that cartridge to make sure it works when I put it in there.
Right.
Right? I mean, that was the challenge. Is it going to work today? Let's see. And so now it's just different challenges, but let the kids help lead you and talk with them and shape it. And that's what's exciting about it. There's a lot of wonderful companies out there. If you haven't been to a conference or an event and seen esports, you're probably attending the wrong conference or event. If you haven't seen the conversation happening, the first step is just having that conversation and figuring it out. And then as we talked about earlier, getting out in your community and making sure that understanding is there before we start running loose on it.
Awesome. Thank you. That was great.
Kyle, this comes to the best part of our conversation here because it's a question that I've thought of. And Alex graciously allows me to ask
it's the
this
best.
each week. You'll notice in our conversations, one of us contributes quantity and one of us contributes quality. So here it is, Kyle. Who was your favorite teacher? Who had the biggest influence on you when you were a student?
Yeah, there's so many. And there was a teacher, Miss Ramsey was one of my probably fourth grade teachers. And, at the time, you don't realize the impact that these people make for you and just supporting you in all your struggles and believing in you. And all it takes is somebody to believe in you. And I kept in touch with her for years as I grew. And now I can reflect on a lot of teachers that had wonderful impacts on me throughout my whole educational experience. But teaching me to not be afraid to try new things and to explore, and if it doesn't work or it didn't get it right, it's okay let's try it again. And that's something that sticks with me throughout my career. And if I ever sit down and get the opportunity to put a book together or something, the title of that is going to be, At Least I Tried. And for me, I want people to know that out there. We talk about trendsetters things and all those kind of things. Just try it. Just take that leap and try to make that difference. Because at the end of the day, I've done things that have failed and hasn't worked, but I can say, you know what? I tried. to help change this, and it didn't work. And you can learn from that on what didn't work for me, but here's something that maybe did. So for everybody out there, and hopefully everybody had a teacher like that too, that just instilled something in you, just try. Let's give it a try and let's see what happens. I think I totally was just so great that Alex just doesn't know what to say. I mean,
Yeah,
Bob, what do you think?
it's because I was
He's
muted.
the most techie tech director we've got here.
Right, exactly. Kyle, that was great. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And we usually ask for our guests to kind of list out some resources, but we're getting kind of close to the end of our time. So I'm wondering if you can kind of share with us, particularly you mentioned curriculum resources several times in the episode. And so if you can kind of share with us some of those, we're going to put those in the show notes so that people can link out to some of those resources. And so I'd love for you to kind of share some of those. Any shout outs to any particular specific resources you want to mention right now?
Through the years, we've used a lot of great resources and companies to help with curriculum out there. There's a lot of great national associations of esports that have paths already kind of blazed with some curriculum that are out there, and a lot of great partners. When we started this, we went down the venture with Dell and really helped to kind of write and craft some stuff in there with some partners in their aspect. STS has some wonderful guides and that ways they can get you curriculum. It really matters which direction you're wanting to go, because the resource will help. Are you wanting resources on developing, or are you wanting resources on how to like build that curriculum? Because there's different paths we can go down on that. But look at what the state organizations, your state organization has. That'll help you sometimes on the curriculum aspect of it and reaching out. Our partners at ISD have some great stuff too, and other industries that help you kind of holistically see the big picture. And it's ever changing. So it's hard for me sometimes to pin it down because I bounce all over the place because I like to see different views from folks on it. There might be one that's like the Bible for some, but I want to look at all sorts of different ones to see what fits right, because it's not cookie cutter. Don't try to just take something and drop it in 100% for you. So I know that's not probably the best answer for you on specific, because I'm all over the place when it comes to resources, but I can follow up as well with some stuff that we can put in show notes. That here are some very specific ones that we can maybe look at to maybe just get your eyes opened a little bit more to the possibilities that are out there for our kids.
Great. Thank you so much. And we'll put those links to those resources in the show notes as well. Kyle, this was a great conversation. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to share. I get excited with this. We could probably talk all day about this stuff, guys, about just ed tech in general.
We absolutely could.
Indeed. All right. Well, until next time, thanks so much.
So, Alex, there was like a cybersecurity Easter egg in this interview. All the preparation we did, we didn't talk about cybersecurity at all in talking to Kyle, and there it was. And as you know, something near and dear to my heart, cybersecurity, or actually, it's more like what gives me heartburn is cybersecurity, not really near and dear, that warm feeling I get.
Yeah, but you love it. And as soon as he mentioned it, I knew you were going there.
Well, it's nice to find somebody who has the same concerns about what we're doing to secure our students' data and our staff's privacy. And it's one that in a big school district, at EduTech, we typically work with smaller schools. Smaller school districts, 5,000 or smaller. So a bigger one like Kyle's has the same challenges. And there's so many times where people think, oh, a big district has more resources. Well, it costs more to do it. And it was nice to talk to him about that and the challenges that he has and that we have. And that it's really why we have gone into the cybersecurity business. It's not because Bob thinks it's glamorous or he wants to do it. It's because our schools they don't know the right questions to even ask, let alone how to secure themselves and how to make the best use of those securities. And that's why I talked a bit about, I feel like you a little here, Alex. I'm going on and on, but this is something I've literally spent the last year or more in preparing for our schools, in that there is a 20% investment we can make to get us 80 or 90% of the way. And nothing is ever secure, but boy, it's nice to not be the most vulnerable out there. And that's why we've come up with this solution for schools and why we're trying to get it out there. But I know Education Collaborators does a cybersecurity audit that clues in schools as to where their vulnerabilities are and what they need to know. But we didn't get to talk much about that. So I'd like to hear you fill us in some.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that you do that ties into what he said is really about the funding, because the SaaS solution, the cybersecurity as a service option that you guys offer is so much less expensive than everything else. And I thought that tied into what he was talking about. When he was talking about cybersecurity, it's about the education, it's about the people. Like the risks are, you can do everything that you want until somebody clicks on a link. And so I get excited when he talked about that, because when we do our cybersecurity assessment, we're really talking about getting that buy-in from the administrators and the community. Because if the community doesn't understand that they are that they need to be part of the solution, then they are necessarily and almost inherently part of the problem. And so, and he's right, the education world is entirely different than the corporate world on this. And if you treat cybersecurity in education the same way you treat it in the corporate world, you will fail. And so I think we do a nice job of trying to broaden that perspective, and you do an incredible job of making it affordable. Not what we started to talk about, but still good stuff. And I'm glad that we had a chance to kind of chat about both, because Kyle really is an expert. I mean, those two things and so many other things, quite frankly.
I haven't been invited to the White House to talk about cybersecurity, so.
No, I used to send my technology home to the White House. That was kind of exciting. But you know what? Even though the president's children worked with me, I still never got an invite to the White House.
I think that's a subtle dig that I don't have anything to do with the White House. I appreciate that.
Bob, another great episode. Kyle was so wonderful. I think he's somebody that we want to maybe talk to again in the future. That was great.
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
All right. Until next time, my friend.
Learning Through Technology, a K-12 EdTech podcast, is brought to you by STS Education, a Pacific OneSource company. To learn more about how educators can leverage technology to drive successful educational outcomes, check us out at www.stsed.com. Connect with us by searching for Learning Through Technology in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And click subscribe so you don't miss an episode. On behalf of the team at STS Education, thanks for joining us.